People often say the most horrific tragedy. On the night of August 28, 2024, a 15-year-old girl sent a shaking text to her friend. "I don't know what my dad just did. I don't know if my mom is still alive." Just minutes before, inside a $1.1 million home in St. James, two people, who once believed they had finally found peace after years of hurt, came face to face with a kind of darkness they never expected, but knew all too well. People say tragedies often begin in silence, but that night, silence turned into gunfire, and the one who pulled the trigger was the man Kelly once called her husband, a murder plan typed out in advance, bullets labeled for each victim, and a whispered confession inside a car. "I killed your mother." What do you think pushes a person to cross a line like that? Leave a comment, hit like, share the video, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the full story. People often say the most horrific tragedies never begin with screaming, but with moments that look perfectly peaceful. And if you look at the last photos of Kelly and Kenny, warm smiles at a birthday party, proud eyes as their families blended into one, you would never imagine that just a few months later, everything would end in the cold echo of gunfire inside a home that seemed completely safe. But true crime has one brutal rule. The most beautiful moments often come right before the biggest storm. If you've watched this far, try answering one question. What do you think drives a man to plan a murder down to the very last bullet? Leave a comment, because this story will shake you. The summer of 2024 was the first time in years that Kelly Coppola, 50 years old, felt like she was finally living again. After a marriage filled with emotional abuse, years of endurance, silence, and a painful divorce that nearly broke her, Kelly believed her heart would never find peace again. But then Kenny Pullman walked into her life, like the light she thought she had lost forever. Kenny, 53, had lost his wife to cancer. He knew what pain was. He knew what it meant to rebuild from nothing. 17 years as a single father had shaped him into someone resilient, compassionate, and deeply certain that love, no matter how late, could still save a person. And when Kenny met Kelly, it was as if two broken pieces had finally found the shape they were always meant to complete. They didn't just fall in love. They came back to life. Everyone who saw them together said they had never seen Kelly glow like that. She laughed more, talked more, lived like someone no longer swallowed by darkness. And Kenny regained something he thought he had lost the day his wife died. A real home. Their two families blended together in a way that felt almost effortless. Kenny's three kids, Brianna, Tyler, and Jenna, welcomed Kelly like she had always belonged. And Kelly's daughter, Gianna, saw in Kenny the kind of steady, gentle man she had always hoped her mother would end up with. Nights in the $1.1 million home in St. James were filled with laughter. Shared dinners, future plans, vacations, birthdays, school events. They were building a new family, not to erase the past, but to heal it. And what makes this story even more heartbreaking is that Kelly and Kenny had finally found a happiness they earned through years of suffering. They found each other after loss. They healed each other. They loved each other truly, but in the shadows, there was someone who couldn't accept that. Someone who saw their happiness as an unforgivable insult. Someone who watched quietly, storing up resentment, planning, step by step. And the very peace Kelly and Kenny created, the peace they had fought so hard to deserve, became the reason the night that followed would be so unimaginably cruel. Some kinds of pain don't leave blood. They leak out slowly, day by day, in silence. Kelly used to tell her family she was fine, but her eyes told a completely different story. Behind closed doors were sleepless nights filled with fear, arguments no one else ever heard, and a husband who believed control was the same thing as love. People often say divorce is freedom, but for Kelly, it was only the beginning of a different nightmare. A nightmare named Daniel. And you won't believe what happened the moment she finally tried to take her life back. Before we go on, ask yourself this: can someone who's been deeply broken ever love again without fear? Leave a comment, because this story is a warning for all of us. Kelly Jean Coppola, the Long Island girl with the radiant smile and the warmest heart, once had everything: a family, a stable job, and a daughter she loved more than life itself. But behind that perfect family photo were cracks that slowly turned into a bottomless pit. Daniel Coppola, her husband, was not the man people thought he was. Over time, he twisted love into control. A wrong word, a delayed text, even a harmless misunderstanding could trigger his rage. Kelly learned to stay quiet, learned to smile so everything looked okay. She called the police once, but the report only said, non-criminal domestic incident. No one truly understood much except Kelly. She lived every day in anxiety, fear and crushing loneliness. Eventually, she realized she had two choices: stay and slowly disappear into the darkness, or leave and face the storm head-on. She chose to leave. The divorce dragged on for months, bitter and relentless. Daniel spiraled, blaming her for ruining his finances, accusing her of destroying his life. But Kelly never looked back. For the first time in years, the sky didn't feel so heavy, and it was then, as if fate had been waiting, that she met Kenny Pullman. Kenny understood pain. He had lived through the worst of it, watching his wife, Kim, die of cancer far too young. He raised their two children alone, built a charity in her name, and promised himself he would never love again. But then he met Kelly, a woman with her own scars, yet a quiet light in her eyes. They met like two souls that had once broken, now finding the only person who could truly understand them. Their love wasn't impulsive. It grew from healing, from laughing together, from remembering the people they lost, from believing that the past does not define the future. People who saw them together would say, "This is the kind of second-chance love everyone deserves." Kelly had once been a prisoner to control. Now she was loved with respect. Kenny had once lost everything. Now he had a family again. But what neither of them knew was that their new happiness had awakened something deadly inside Daniel, a darkness he had been hiding, feeding and nurturing for years. Sometimes the most dangerous person isn't a stranger. It's the one who slept beside you for years. And for Kelly, that person was Daniel. Daniel Coppola didn't show up as a villain on day one. Like so many true crime stories, the darkness inside him grew from small things: control, jealousy, and a twisted belief that Kelly owed him her whole life while they were still married. Daniel had explosive bursts of anger, emotional manipulation, and moments of intimidation that Kelly only mentioned to a few of her closest friends. Police had documented a previous domestic incident, but it was marked non-criminal, as if it wasn't serious enough to matter. But anyone who understands domestic violence knows that is always the warning sign, a subtle alarm of danger ahead. When Kelly filed for divorce, Daniel fell apart in a way no one expected. He didn't just feel heartbroken, he turned heartbreak into hatred. Kelly's friends said Daniel became bitter, cruel, repeating lines like, "She destroyed my entire financial life. She's going to make me pay for this." For many people, divorce is the end. But for Daniel, it was the spark that pushed him into a psychological tailspin. He could not accept that Kelly was free. He could not accept that she was happy without him. And he absolutely could not accept another man stepping into her life. When Kenny appeared, Daniel didn't see a kind man who cared for Kelly and her family. He saw a replacement, a thief who had taken everything from him. This wasn't jealousy anymore. This was obsession, an obsession strong enough to turn a man into a predator. Daniel watched. He followed. He collected information. He tracked Kelly's happiness, her routine, her new home, that $1.1 million house that symbolized a life he no longer had access to. And instead of moving on, he fed the idea that the only way to win was to use violence to regain control. At first glance, these details seem like harmless fragments of a messy divorce. But put them together, and you see Daniel's true shape: a man with a wounded ego, pathological jealousy, uncontrolled rage, and a belief that Kelly had no right to be happy unless he approved of it. Those shadows didn't fade. They waited. And one day, they grew strong enough to destroy two lives. If you've ever met someone like Daniel, jealous, controlling, holding grudges for years, what do you think is the biggest red flag? Leave a comment. There are nights that change the fate of an entire family. And the night of August 28, 2024, was the moment Kelly and Kenny's happiness was ripped apart in just a few horrifying minutes. That evening, everything began with something that seemed harmless: Daniel was driving Gianna, Kelly's 15-year-old daughter, around Long Island, but it didn't take long for Gianna to realize something was terribly wrong. Her father was driving recklessly, swerving, hitting objects on the side of the road, and his eyes were filled with something she had never seen before: instability. Terrified, she begged him, "Dad, can you please take me back to Mom's house?" Daniel agreed, but that was the beginning of the nightmare. When they arrived at Kelly and Kenny's home, the house filled with laughter, blended families, and a future, Daniel didn't leave. Instead, at 11:30 p.m., he sent Gianna a message. Not a threat, not a warning, but a question cold enough to freeze the blood of anyone who read it. Where is Kenny's bedroom? Gianna couldn't have known that, in that moment, her father had already made a decision he could never come back from. Daniel told her to wait in the car. The poor girl had no idea she was about to become an unwilling witness to the most brutal crime of her life. Daniel stepped out of the car and hid behind a bush near the house. Inside, everything was quiet, the soft glow of nightlight still warming the windows. No one inside knew that the man Kelly once married was standing outside, ready to pull the trigger. And then the first blast echoed. Daniel fired directly at the door lock, blowing it apart. A home that had been a sanctuary just seconds earlier turned into a war zone. He rushed upstairs to the second floor, to the bedroom where Kelly and Kenny were asleep. No warning, no chance to escape. No time to understand what was happening. And in just a few seconds, Daniel pulled the trigger. Kelly and Kenny were shot to death in the very room they had called their new beginning. Back in the car, Gianna waited, shaking, confused, terrified, having no idea her mother was already gone. When Daniel returned, he didn't hide it. He didn't comfort her. He didn't try to soften the truth. He simply said the sentence that would shatter a 15-year-old girl's life forever. "I killed your mother and Kenny." Imagine being 15, and the first thing your father says after a night of chaos is a murder confession. No gunshot could hurt more than that moment. Gianna texted her friends, desperate, panicked. "I don't know what my dad just did. I don't know if my mom is alive." Those messages became the very first alarm bells in a massacre that shook all of Long Island. If you're still listening, tell me, how do you feel about Daniel after hearing this part of the story? Angry, terrified, or just unable to believe a man could do this in front of his own child? Leave a comment. When police arrived at the home on Brasswood Road in the early hours of August 29, 2024, they walked into a scene no one could possibly be prepared for. The front door had been blown apart, splintered wood scattered across the floor, and inside, Kelly and Kenny lay motionless in the bedroom. Their bodies were already cold, surrounded by signs of chaos that made one thing painfully clear: they never had a chance to fight back. Meanwhile, at Daniel's house on Harbor Road, an entirely different scene was unfolding. Gianna, still in shock, shaking uncontrollably, led officers to the gun hidden inside the home, while Daniel sat on a chair already subdued, muttering vague, broken sentences as if he had accepted that everything was over. But nothing was over. Everything was just beginning. During their search of Daniel's home, detectives discovered something far more disturbing than the killings themselves: a typed murder plan. Not a note, not a threat, but a detailed blueprint of violence so cold, investigators physically shivered when reading it. In that document, Daniel wrote, "I'm in a completely clear state of mind. I know exactly what I'm about to do." And then came the detail that stunned the entire investigative team. Daniel had bullets engraved with the names of every person connected to the divorce. Kelly, Kenny, Kelly's attorney, Daniel's own attorney, and even the judge. This wasn't a moment of rage. This was a planned massacre, stopped just minutes before he could continue. At the crime scene, police found Daniel's flip-flops. One of them was under Kenny's body. Kenny's brother, Tommy, broke down, "My brother died trying to protect Kelly." No confession was needed. Every shred of evidence pointed to Daniel with razor-sharp clarity. As officers escorted him to the patrol car, the body cam captured the moment he whispered a quiet admission of guilt. Daniel was immediately charged with second-degree murder, but once detectives pieced together the break-in, the execution-style killings, and the written plan, the charges were upgraded to first-degree murder, the most severe count, carrying life in prison without parole. As justice slowly began to move, two families were collapsing under the weight of unimaginable loss. The Pullman family struggled to comfort Kenny's 3 children, kids who woke up one morning and realized their father was never coming home again. Kelly's family, meanwhile, faced a double tragedy, losing Kelly and watching a 15-year-old girl carry a psychological wound she may never recover from. The entire Long Island community was shaken. Thousands sent messages, condolences, and support. 2 fundraising campaigns were created, and within days, hundreds of thousands of dollars poured in, a collective way of saying you are not alone. But no amount of money could fill the void left by 2 lives stolen so brutally. When the first court hearing took place, the room was packed. Someone in the back shouted, "Murderer!" Daniel, the man who took 2 innocent lives, lowered his head, showing no remorse. Not a single tear, not a single sign of humanity. And what remained was a haunting question. How does a person go so far as to plan the murder of the very people who once helped him? So tell me, do you think Daniel was a man who completely lost his humanity, or was he a ticking time bomb society ignored for too long? Leave your thoughts in the comments. No sentence will ever be long enough. No apology will ever be deep enough to erase the pain Kelly's and Kenny's families now carry. But if this story ended only with Daniel's brutality, it would leave nothing but darkness. And Kelly and Kenny deserve so much more than that. After the murders, what moved the Long Island community wasn't just the horror of the crime. It was the unwavering love the 2 victims left behind. People said Kelly was the kind of woman who never missed a birthday, a school play, or even a simple check-in message. She lived through small acts of kindness, quiet, genuine gestures that everyone who received them remembered. She tried to make others happy, even when she herself carried private pain that few ever saw. And Kenny, people described him as unforgettable after just 1 meeting, a man filled with warmth, positivity, and quiet strength. He loved life, he loved his family, and above all, he loved being a father. Friends said he was the kind of person who would stop and help you change a tire in the rain, even if he'd never met you before. After losing his first wife to cancer, he raised his children alone and rebuilt his world from heartbreak, only to eventually find Kelly, the woman who brought light back into his life. Their legacy isn't the $1.1 million home. That isn't the smiling photos. Their real legacy is the way they treated people. Kelly leaves behind a gentle heart that lives on through Gianna. Kenny leaves behind strength, resilience, and unconditional love in his 3 children. And now both families and the whole community are working together to protect what Kelly and Kenny planted: love, kindness, and unity. The support funds weren't created just to help financially. They exist to remind everyone how beautifully these 2 lived. Hundreds of thousands of dollars poured in, not out of charity but out of love. Love for the children left behind. Love for Gianna, who now begins the long journey of healing. Love for a couple who touched more hearts than their deaths could ever erase. Every message, every hug, every tear at the vigils was proof. Kelly and Kenny made an impact too big, too bright, too human for death to silence, and that's why, in True Crime Done Right, we never end with the killer's name. We end with the names of the people who deserve to be remembered. Kelly Coppola, Kenny Pullman. 2 lives taken in tragedy, but 2 legacies that cannot be stolen. Love. If you believe this story is not only about violence, but also about the power of love and resilience, leave a comment. Share this video so that the light of Kelly and Kenny never fades. That night, Heather sent her dad a short text. "Look at me. Dad, I can drive now." She just learned how to drive a stick shift, her voice full of excitement. A few hours later, that same car was found by the riverbank. The doors were locked. Her purse still sat on the front seat. Her phone had gone completely silent, and Heather was nowhere to be found. In Myrtle Beach, everyone knows everyone, but no one knew what really happened to the 20-year-old girl that night. Her father kept calling again and again, only to hear the cold, endless ring on the other end. "Sweetheart, please call me back. I'm so worried. What started as an ordinary date quickly spun out of control." And from that moment on, the name Heather Elvis became a haunting memory that still lingers over the entire town. Myrtle Beach, they call it the city of sun, sand, and smiles. By day, the eastern shore buzzes with crashing waves and the steady beat of music pouring from beach bars that never seem to close. Thousands of tourists flood in, eating seafood, laughing loudly, taking photos under the neon lights. It feels like a place that never sleeps. But just a few miles west, the air changes. The streets narrow and quiet, shaded by oak trees. Old wooden houses sit still, holding on to the breath of an older South. Here, people live slowly. They know each other's faces, each other's stories. They cherish their calm, and sometimes they keep their distance from anything that comes from the other side, where the glow of tourism fades. Heather Elvis grew up in that quieter West. She was the oldest of 3 kids, polite yet full of spirit. Friends remembered her as the girl who always smiled, always knew how to make you feel comfortable when you talked to her. At 20, Heather was already independent. After finishing high school, she moved out with her best friend, Brianna Warland. The 2 girls rented a tiny apartment, decorating it with thrift store finds and Polaroid photos taped all over the walls. They lived simply, worked hard, and shared soft-spoken dreams about their future. Heather worked as a waitress at a bar called the Tilted Kilt, where girls in short skirts served beer to tourists. Every night she came home late, her hair carrying the smell of smoke and fryer oil. But she always texted her parents, "I'm home." The job wasn't easy, but Heather never complained. She saved every dollar to pay rent and to take makeup classes, something she truly loved. "I'm going to be a makeup artist," she once told her dad. "I just want to help people feel confident, feel beautiful." A roommate, Brianna, often joked, "If someone ever breaks Heather's heart, she won't cry for long. By morning, she'll put on her lipstick, smile again, like nothing ever happened." Between the 2 faces of Myrtle Beach, the loud laughter of tourists and the quiet rhythm of locals, Heather was like a bridge connecting those worlds. She carried the brightness of youth and the gentleness of home. No one knew that this very contrast between glitter and stillness would soon become the backdrop of her tragedy. On the night of December 17, 2013, Heather was getting ready for a date she'd been looking forward to for weeks. The guy she was about to meet was Stephen, someone she'd recently connected with on Instagram. They hadn't known each other long, but Heather told her roommate Brianna that he was funny, easy to talk to, and honest. Brianna still remembers that afternoon. Heather spent hours picking out an outfit. She tried on 3 different dresses before settling on a simple cream-colored sweater. "Don't dress like you're going to work," Brianna teased. "Just be yourself." Heather laughed, snapped a selfie, and sent it to her friend before heading out. That night, the 2 had dinner at a small downtown restaurant. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but for Heather it felt special. She texted Brianna throughout the evening, even from inside the car with Stephen. "He's teaching me how to drive stick," she wrote. "I've never been able to do it before." Near midnight, Heather sent one last picture, sitting in the driver's seat, smiling under the soft glow of the dashboard lights. The message read, "Look at me, I did it." Later that night, Stephen dropped her off at her apartment on White River Drive. He said goodbye, then drove away. Around 11:55 p.m., Brianna received Heather's final text. "Had so much fun. I'm home safe." That was the last time anyone ever heard from her. The next morning, Brianna woke early to leave town for the holidays. Before heading out, she scribbled a quick note for Heather. "When I'm back, let's go get breakfast." The note stayed right there on the table, never read. Police would later say there were no signs that Heather was in danger that night. No screams, no strange noises, no cameras catching anything unusual. Just a normal evening. 2 young people out on a date, laughing, driving, saying goodbye. Nothing out of the ordinary. But only a few hours later, Heather's car was found in a place no one expected, abandoned near a